Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who want to build million-dollar businesses without sacrificing their health, relationships, or happiness, who understand that in order to build their empire, they need a solid foundation, and that the more they are thriving, the more their business is thriving too. This show brings you the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbutt, the scientist turned mindset and high-performance coach for entrepreneurs, and I help you get wired for success. Hey there, and welcome to another short and sweet Wired for Success solo episode. I haven't done one of those in quite some time, so I decided to share a little behind-the-scenes episode with you today. If you have listened to this show for a while, you might know that running my first 50K ultra marathon was one of my goals for 2022. And this was a huge and scary goal for me. I had only ever run one marathon before, and I wasn't sure if I could really do this. Turns out I can. I ran the 50K a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to take some time today to deconstruct that experience and share what I've learned. And I think this is a fun thing to do because it shows you how I approach challenges and how I help my clients achieve their goals too. So if you want, you can follow along, you can swap out my goals for your goals and use this framework to achieve them. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Why did I set this goal for myself? Well, it wasn't so much to prove something to myself or others. I was more driven by my curiosity. And I know that when you do something really challenging, you can learn something interesting about yourself. In this case, when you run for hours and hours and you're starting to feel exhausted and tired, you can explore what themes and topics your mind keeps coming back to. Do you ruminate about the past or worry about the future? Maybe you've had a few experiences in your life that you have chosen to suppress and not think about. And maybe you're keeping yourself super busy all the time so that you never allow time and space for them to surface. And when you're running all by yourself for hours and hours, you create that time and space, and things might start to bubble up, and you can finally allow yourself to deal with them. And I find that doing this while you're running is super helpful because when you're already moving, difficult emotions are easier to process, at least in my experience. They seem to move through you with less resistance. And this probably has a lot to do with the potent effects of the neurochemical cocktail of dopamine, noradrenaline, serotonin, and endorphins that your brain is flooded with when you exercise. And in my coaching, I focus on bridging that gap between psychology and physiology. And this, my friends, is an example of one of those bridges, because your mindset and emotions are supported by your physiology and the other way around. So those two forces can either be aligned, and the result of that is that you experience flow and ease, or they can be misaligned, and then you experience tension, frustration, anxiety, and so on. Does that make sense? The next thing to notice is that the goal I set was outside of my comfort zone. It wasn't completely insane. After all, I had run a marathon before, but it was still something that I have never done before and that would require some serious effort. And this is the sweet spot for goal setting. Make your goal big enough to be exciting and a little bit daunting, because that means that it's outside of your current comfort zone and requires you to grow in order to achieve it. Yet you don't want to make it so ridiculously big that it's completely overwhelming you and you don't believe that it's possible for you to achieve. Once you have an exciting and slightly daunting goal and you're committed to achieving it, what do you do next? Well, you need a plan, right? After all, you don't accidentally become an ultramarathon runner. Your actions define whom you become. So if you want to become a runner, you must go running on a consistent basis. If you want to become a writer, you must write on a consistent basis, right? So the same is true for other goals you set for yourself. If you don't take aligned action that takes you closer to those goals, you won't get there. Now, if you want to achieve something you haven't achieved so far, you likely have to do things you haven't done so far, right? Because what got you to where you are now won't necessarily get you to where you want to go next. So the first thing to do is to figure out what you need to do differently. And there are generally two ways to do this. You can either ask someone who has already done this and learn from them or their experiences, or you can experiment and figure it out on your own. And yes, you can definitely combine those two ways to come up with a customized solution that works for you. In fact, that's a great way to do it, and that's what I did in this case as well. So I talked to ultra runners and I asked them for advice. And I looked up 50K training plans and came up with a plan that worked for my schedule and preferences. And what I discovered was that it wasn't just about improving endurance. You need to make sure that all your muscles are strong enough to support you on your long runs. And that's why I added extra core and strength training, plus strides and jumps once a week. And that's a great example that demonstrates that if you're trying to achieve your next level goal, simply by doing more of what you've been doing all along, you might still miss your target because you might have to tweak other things simultaneously to create your desired results. And it's not always obvious what those tweaks look like. And that's why it's great to get advice from people who have already done what you're trying to do, because they can point you in the right direction. Okay, once you have an action plan, you have to follow your plan and be consistent. I mean, I had weeks when I surpassed my training goals, and I had weeks when I missed the target. And that's okay, because life happens, right? I knew that if I managed to stick to my plan most of the time, I'd be fine. Too often people aim for perfection and give up as soon as they realize that they can't fulfill their own high expectations all the time. Don't do that. If you missed a day or two, don't abandon your goal. Just get back on track. That brings me to another important point. When you create your action plan, you want to make sure you calculate enough margin, meaning you create your plan in a way that allows you to still achieve your goals even if you miss some days. I gave myself a 3 to 4 months window to train and then run the 50K. I didn't set an exact date because I wanted to keep that flexibility. And this approach doesn't work for everyone. You have to know yourself. If you know that you tend to procrastinate, then this approach is likely not going to work for you and you'll be better off setting a date. I know myself well enough to know that I will seize the opportunity when it presents itself, and keeping the date flexible takes the pressure off. So I train and prepare, and then I allow myself to go with the flow. It sounds weird when I say it like this, but this works well for me. Okay, now you have your why, you have your goal, you're committed, you have your action plan, and you're consistently taking action. Chances are you might still experience self-doubt from time to time. As I said, I didn't set an exact date for my 50K run. Instead, I gave myself a window of about 2 to 3 weeks. Let me tell you, I did not feel ready when it was time to finally do this. I had run 50 to 60K most weeks during my training months, but the longest test run had been 28K. And that had felt pretty damn hard. So the thought of having to run almost twice as long made me nervous. And you know what it's like if you have to do something that makes you feel uncomfortable. It feels like it's never the right time to get started, right? Okay, I'm gonna let you in on a little trick I sometimes use that I find super helpful in those situations. I commit to only part of the challenge and then I take it from there. So what this looked like in this case was that I initially only planned on doing another longer test run, maybe 25K that day. Once I had done the 25K and still felt okay, I thought, well, if I stop now, I will have to start from zero next time again. If I keep going, I only have to do another 25K and I'm done. Now, when you have already come to that halfway point, it's so much easier to motivate yourself to keep going. And the great thing about this flexible approach is that it allows me to go with the flow and keep the pressure low. I didn't have a sleepless night before the big run. I wasn't nervous. I didn't worry. So that is a big plus for me. Again, this approach won't work for everyone because everyone has a different way of dealing with inner and outer expectations and of handling pressure. It's important to figure out what works for you. You have to figure out what motivates you and what kind of structure helps you achieve your goals. I had another little trick that helped me get through the long run. So on that day, my son had followed me when I left the house and had accompanied me for the first 10K. And this was completely unplanned and unexpected. And initially I thought about abandoning my plan to do the long test run and thought about only doing a short run with him instead. But then I thought that this would actually be a great way to turn this into a wonderful memory for the both of us. If I kept going, my first 50K would forever be linked to the memory of the two of us running together and having a great time. So that's what I did. And whenever I felt like giving up, the thought of creating this special, meaningful memory gave me new energy. And there you have it, the breakdown of my first ultramarathon from intention to achievement. Hope you found this helpful. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Take care and talk to you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please take a sec to rate and review my show or share it with a friend. That way you can support the show and help me reach and support other entrepreneurs like yourself as well. If you would like my help to figure out how you can go from overwhelmed and overworked hustler to empowered and confident leader, check out my website at www.wiredforsuccess.solutions and book a free 20-minute strategy session with me. Can't wait to help you get wired for success. Until next time, take care. Bye.